I, 58F, stood by the small podium my husband had insisted on renting for his retirement party. My hands felt cold as I gripped the edges of my note cards, the words I had so carefully written blurring in front of my eyes. The party was in our backyard, a place where I had hosted countless birthdays, holidays, and summer barbecues. It was my domain, a space I had filled with love and warmth for over 30 years. But tonight it felt alien. It felt like a stage, and I was an unwilling actor in a play I hadn't rehearsed for. David, my husband of 35 years, was sitting at the head table, beaming. He had worked hard his entire life, and this moment was his. It was supposed to be ours. Next to him sat his mother, Margaret. She was a woman who seemed to be carved from ice, her smile a thin, sharp line that never quite reached her eyes. She had a proprietary hand on David's arm, as if he were still her 10-year-old boy and not a 62-year-old man retiring from a long career. I was seated on his other side, but there was a noticeable gap between our chairs, a small but significant distance she had engineered when arranging the seating. My son, Leo, who was 28, stood near her, a loyal soldier awaiting his orders. I had felt his eyes on me the entire evening, cold and dismissive. I cleared my throat, tapping the microphone. "Hello, everyone," I began, my voice trembling just a little. "For those who don't know me, I'm Susan, David's wife." A polite smattering of applause went through the crowd of friends and family. I looked at David, and he gave me a small, encouraging nod, though his eyes quickly darted back to his mother. I started my speech, talking about the day I met him, the struggles we had overcome, the family we had built. I spoke of his integrity, his quiet strength, the way he could always make me laugh even on the hardest days. I was getting to the part about our future, the adventures we had planned for his retirement, when a voice cut through the air, sharp and loud. "Speech over, Grandma." The voice was Leo's. "My son." The words hung in the sudden, shocked silence of the backyard. I stopped, my mouth still open. I looked at Leo, who was standing with his arms crossed, a defiant smirk on his face. Next to him, Margaret had a look of serene satisfaction, as if this was precisely the moment she had been waiting for. She gave Leo a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of approval. The word "grandma" was the twist of the knife. He had never called me that. It was what he called her. He was lumping me in with her, but not as an equal. He was using her title to dismiss me, to age me, to put me in my place as someone whose time was over. The humiliation was a physical thing. It felt like a hot wave washing over my skin, followed by an icy chill that settled deep in my bones. I saw my sister, Claire, in the crowd, her face a mask of outrage. I saw David's friends looking uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, not knowing where to look. And I saw David. He looked down at his plate, a flush creeping up his neck. He didn't say a word. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct our son. He just sat there, in his silence, and let his mother and his son erase me from our own celebration. In that moment, something inside me broke. It wasn't a loud, shattering noise. It was a quiet, final snap. The part of me that had spent decades trying to keep the peace, to smooth things over, to pretend that Margaret's constant undermining was just her way, died. This was not a joke. This was not a youthful indiscretion. This was a declaration of war, and I had been the only one on the battlefield who hadn't realized the fighting had already begun. I folded my note cards carefully, my hands steady now. I placed them on the podium. I looked directly at Leo, and then at Margaret. I didn't say anything. I just looked at them, letting the silence stretch, letting everyone in that yard feel the weight of what had just happened. Then, I turned and walked away from the podium, leaving my speech unfinished. I went back to my seat, picked up my glass of water, and took a slow, deliberate sip. The party continued around me, a little more subdued, a little more awkward. But I wasn't there anymore. I was somewhere else, a cold, quiet place where a plan was beginning to form. They had crossed a line that they didn't even know existed, and they had no idea how far I was willing to go to make them regret it. The drive to keep the peace had been the central theme of my marriage. From the very beginning, Margaret had viewed me as an intruder. David was her only child, and she had raised him alone after her husband passed away when David was young. Their bond was incredibly tight, and she never let me forget that I was an outsider who had stolen her son's affection. In the early years, her tactics were subtle. She would forget to include me in family plans, then feign surprise when David asked where I was. She would give me backhanded compliments that were designed to chip away at my confidence. "That's a lovely dress, Susan," she would say. "It's so brave of you to wear such a bold color at your age." David, caught in the middle, always chose the path of least resistance. "That's just Mom," he'd say with a shrug. "She doesn't mean anything by it." "Don't be so sensitive," he taught me, through his inaction, that my feelings were secondary to his mother's comfort. My role was to absorb her barbs, to smile and nod, to ensure that the delicate ecosystem of his family was not disturbed. And for years, I did it. I did it for him. I did it for Leo because I wanted my son to have a loving relationship with his grandmother. I thought I was being the bigger person, the peacemaker. I see now that I was just being a doormat. When Leo was born, Margaret's campaign escalated. She was no longer just undermining me. She was actively working to co-opt my son. She positioned herself as his primary confidant, the one who truly understood him. She bought him extravagant gifts that we couldn't afford, making our own presence seem small and insignificant. She created a world of secrets between them, little inside jokes and shared stories that I was not privy to. She would tell him things like, "Your mother is a bit high-strung, Leo. You and I were the calm ones." She painted me as an anxious, overbearing mother, while she was the cool, understanding grandmother. Leo, a child eager for affection and attention, soaked it all up. He began to parrot her opinions. If I asked him to do his homework, he would say, "Grandma says a little break is good for the brain." If I disciplined him, he would run to the phone and call her, and I would later get a call from David saying, "Mom thinks you were a little hard on him." I was being systematically stripped of my parental authority in my own home, and my husband was her willing accomplice. I tried to talk to David about it many times. I would show him concrete examples of her manipulation. But he was blind to it, or perhaps he just didn't want to see it. "She loves him, Susan," he would say. "She's just trying to help." It was easier for him to believe that I was jealous than to confront the fact that his mother was a master manipulator. The party was supposed to be a fresh start. David's retirement was a milestone we had looked forward to for years. We were going to travel. We were going to spend more time together, just the two of us, and rediscover the couple we were before jobs and parenting and in-laws consumed our lives. I had poured my heart into planning this celebration. I chose the caterer, the music, the decorations. I wanted it to be perfect, a testament to our shared life. But Margaret had inserted herself at every turn. She criticized my choice of flowers. She insisted on inviting her own friends, people David hadn't seen in 20 years. She demanded a specific type of cake from a bakery an hour away. Each request was a small power play, a way of reminding me that this was her son's party, not mine. I had let it all go, telling myself it was just one day. I could endure her meddling for one more day for the sake of peace. But what happened with Leo was different. It wasn't a backhanded compliment or a disagreement over decorations. It was a public execution of my role in the family. He had stood up, in front of everyone we knew, and declared that my voice did not matter. And in his eyes, I saw not just the arrogance of youth, but the cold, learned cruelty of his grandmother. He was her perfect soldier, and she had just ordered him to fire. The silence from my husband was the final, devastating blow. It told me that after 35 years, I was still the outsider. I was still the one who had to be sacrificed for the sake of his mother's happiness. The morning after the party, the house was quiet. The caterers had cleared away the evidence of the celebration, but the ghost of it remained. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I couldn't drink. David came in, looking tired and drawn. He avoided my eyes, busying himself with making his own coffee. The silence was thick with unspoken words. I waited for him to say something, anything. an apology, an explanation, a defense. But he said nothing. He just stirred his coffee, the clinking of the spoon against the ceramic mug the only sound in the room. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Are you going to say anything?" I asked, my voice flat. He sighed, a long, weary sound. "Susan, can we not do this today? I'm exhausted." "Do what, David?" I said, my voice rising slightly. "Do what?" "Acknowledge that our son publicly humiliated me last night at your retirement party while you sat there and did nothing." "He was just being a kid," he said, still not looking at me. "He was probably a little drunk. You know how he gets." "He is a 28-year-old man," I shot back. "And he was not drunk. He was cruel. And your mother put him up to it." I saw her. "Oh, here we go," he said, finally turning to face me. "Blaming my mother. It's always my mother. Can't you just accept that maybe you were rambling a bit and he was trying to be funny?" "Funny?" I asked, my voice incredulous. "You think that was funny? To call me grandma and tell me my speech was over? In front of all our friends? Our family?" "You're being overly sensitive," he said, using his mother's favorite phrase. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I felt a cold rage settle over me. This was it. This was his move. Deny, dismiss, and deflect. Make me the problem. Make my feelings the issue. I had seen him do it 1,000 times, but this time was different. I was not going to let him. "No, David," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I am not. For the first time in 35 years, I am seeing things exactly as they are. You have allowed your mother to disrespect me from the day we met. And you have allowed her to turn our son against me. Last night was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of you choosing her over me." "That's not fair," he said, his voice pleading now. "You know that's not true." "It is true," I said, standing up. "And I am done with it. I am done being the bigger person. I am done keeping the peace. The peace was only ever for you and for her. It was never for me." He stared at me, his eyes wide with a dawning understanding that something had fundamentally shifted between us. "What are you saying?" he asked. "I'm saying that things are going to change," I said. "And you are not going to like it." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving him standing there with his coffee. I went to my office, a small room at the back of the house that had always been my sanctuary. I closed the door and sat at my desk. The plan that had been a vague notion the night before was now beginning to take shape. It was no longer just about getting an apology. It was about taking back my life. It was about dismantling the toxic dynasty Margaret had built, brick by brick. And I knew exactly where to start. I needed to confirm my suspicions. I knew in my gut that Margaret had orchestrated the whole thing, but I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't just being, as David would say, overly sensitive. I called my sister, Claire. She had always been my staunchest ally, the only one who saw Margaret for the manipulator she was. She answered on the first ring. "I was just about to call you," she said, her voice tight with anger. "Are you okay? I wanted to come over and punch both of them in the face last night." "I'm okay," I said, though it was a lie. "Claire, I need to ask you something. You were sitting at a table with a clear view of the head table. Just before Leo said what he said, did you see anything? Any interaction between him and Margaret?" "See anything?" she scoffed. "Susan, it was like watching a mob boss give an order. He was looking at you, and she leaned over and whispered something in his ear. He smirked, and then she gave him this little nod, like a queen sending her knight into battle. And then he stood up and said it. It was completely staged. I saw the whole thing." Her words were a cold comfort. They confirmed my worst fears, but they also validated my anger. I was not crazy. I was not imagining things. This was real. This was a calculated attack. "Thank you, Claire," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I needed to hear that." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I lied. "But I'm not going to let this go." After I hung up with Claire, I sat for a long time thinking. I started to look back, not just at the big moments of disrespect, but at the small, insidious ones. the 1,000 tiny cuts that had bled me dry over the years. I remembered Leo's high school graduation. I had planned a special dinner for him at his favorite restaurant. The day before, he came to me and said that the plans had changed. Grandma already made reservations at the Oak Room, he said. She invited all of her friends to celebrate. He didn't even seem to realize how hurtful that was. He just saw a fancier restaurant and a bigger party. When I tried to explain that I had wanted to do something special for him, just our family, he had rolled his eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Mom," he had said, another of Margaret's phrases echoing from his mouth. I had ended up canceling my reservation and attending Margaret's celebration, where I was seated at the far end of the table, next to one of her deaf friends who didn't speak to me all night. Then there was the matter of the family heirlooms. My mother had given me a beautiful set of pearl earrings before she passed away. They were my most treasured possession. I had told Leo that one day they would belong to his wife. A few years ago, Leo started dating a girl named Amelia. She was a sweet girl, and I liked her very much. One day, Amelia came to a family dinner wearing my pearl earrings. I was stunned. I asked her where she got them. She looked uncomfortable and said, "Margaret gave them to me. She said they were a family heirloom and that you never wore them, so you wouldn't mind." I had been speechless. Margaret had gone into my jewelry box, taken my mother's earrings, and given them to my son's girlfriend, all while spinning a lie that made me look careless and unappreciative. When I confronted her, she had feigned innocence. "Oh, dear," she had said, "I thought they were mine." My memory isn't what it used to be, but I saw the glint of triumph in her eyes. I opened my laptop and started searching through old emails. I typed in Margaret's name and scrolled back, years and years. I found an email from Leo from his freshman year of college. He was struggling in a class and was worried about his grades. I had given him some advice, some study tips, and offered to help him find a tutor. A few days later, I found an email he had forwarded to Margaret. It was my email to him. His message to her was simple. "See what I have to deal with? She's trying to control my life even from 100 miles away." Margaret's reply was sickeningly sweet. "Oh, my darling boy. Your mother just doesn't understand the pressure you're under. You don't need a tutor. You just need to relax. Why don't you let me send you some money so you can take your friends out for a nice dinner? Don't worry about your mother. I'll handle her." I felt a wave of nausea. She hadn't just undermined my advice, she had paid him to ignore it. She had taught him that my concern was control, and her money was freedom. I kept digging. I found emails between Margaret and her friends, discussing me. She described me as fragile and prone to anxiety. She told them that David was worried about my mental state, and that she was doing her best to support him through this difficult time. She was creating a narrative, painting me as an unstable burden to her perfect son. She was isolating me, ensuring that if I ever tried to speak out, no one would believe me. They would just see the fragile, anxious woman that Margaret had so carefully constructed. The pieces were all there, a mosaic of manipulation and deceit that spanned decades. The party wasn't the beginning. It was the endgame. It was her victory lap. She had successfully turned my son into her puppet and my husband into her silent partner. She believed she had won. But the game wasn't over. She had just taught me how to play. The financial side of things had always been David's domain. He was a numbers guy, an accountant, and he handled our investments and our retirement planning. I trusted him completely. I had never had any reason not to. We lived comfortably. We had a solid nest egg, and he always assured me that our future was secure. But after uncovering the depth of Margaret's emotional manipulation, a seed of doubt was planted. If she could manipulate him so easily in matters of the heart, could she also be influencing him in matters of our money? I started with our joint checking account. I logged into our online banking portal, something I rarely did. I scrolled through months of transactions. Utility bills, mortgage payments, groceries, the usual things. But then I saw it. A recurring transfer, on the first of every month, for $2,000. The recipient was listed simply as M. Jennings, personal, M for Margaret. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. $2,000. Every month. For how long? I clicked back, month after month, year after year. It had been going on for 10 years. That was $240,000. My hands were shaking. We weren't wealthy people. We were comfortable, but $240,000 was a significant portion of our savings. It was our travel fund. It was our emergency fund. It was our security. And it had been draining out of our account, a slow, steady bleed that I had never noticed. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was for her living expenses. She lived in a small, paid-off condo, but she had a modest pension. Maybe she needed help. But $2,000 a month seemed excessive. And why was it a secret? Why had David never mentioned this to me? That evening, I decided to ask him about it. I approached it casually, trying not to sound accusatory. We were in the living room, watching television. During a commercial break, I turned to him. "David," I said, "I was looking at our bank statement today, and I saw a monthly transfer to your mom. I just wanted to make sure everything is okay with her financially." He tensed immediately. His eyes flickered to the television, then back to me. "It's fine," he said, his tone clipped. "It's just something I do to help her out." $2,000 a month is a lot of help, I said, keeping my voice even. "Is she in some kind of trouble?" "No, she's not in trouble," he said, getting defensive. "It's for her care. For the future. In case she needs a nursing home or something. It's better to put it aside now." "Put it aside where?" I asked. "It's a transfer to her personal account. Is she saving it?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. "Yes," he said. "She's putting it in a high-yield savings account. It's the responsible thing to do." I knew he was lying. I could see it in the way he wouldn't meet my gaze, in the way he was gripping the remote control so tightly his knuckles were white. But I didn't push it. Not yet. I had the information I needed. He was hiding something, and it was connected to his mother. The next day, while he was out playing golf, I went into his home office. I had always respected his privacy, but the rules had changed. I felt a pang of guilt as I sat down at his desk, but I pushed it away. This was about my survival. I started looking through his file cabinet, which he kept meticulously organized. I found a folder labeled Retirement. Inside were statements from our various investment accounts. I started going through them one by one. Our main portfolio looked fine, exactly as I expected. But then I found a folder at the very back, tucked away behind everything else. It was labeled Jennings Trust. My heart started to pound. I opened it. Inside were statements for an investment account I had never seen before. The account was in David's name, but the address on the statement was Margaret's. I looked at the transaction history. Every month, for the past 10 years, $2,000 had been deposited into this account. But that wasn't all. Margaret had been making her own contributions as well, small amounts here and there. And then I saw the beneficiary designation form. The primary beneficiary of this secret trust account, which was being funded with our money, was not David. It was not me. It was Leo. I sank back in the chair, the papers trembling in my hand. It all clicked into place. This wasn't a care fund for Margaret. This was a secret inheritance for Leo. Margaret had convinced David to siphon money from our shared retirement to build a separate nest egg for their golden boy, completely cutting me out. And the lie she had used to do, it was the most painful part of all. I found a letter from her to David, tucked into the folder. It was dated 10 years ago, right around the time the transfers started. "My dearest David," it read, "I am so worried about Susan. She is wonderful, but she has never been good with money. All this talk of traveling and expensive hobbies for your retirement frightens me. I fear she will spend your hard-earned savings frivolously. We need to protect your future and Leo's. This little fund will be our secret, a safety net that she can't touch. It will ensure that you are taken care of, and that Leo has a head start in life, no matter what happens. It's the responsible thing to do for your family." The audacity of it took my breath away. She had painted me as a flighty, irresponsible spendthrift, a danger to my own family's financial security. And David had believed her. He had believed his mother's poison over his wife of 35 years. He had conspired with her to steal from our future, from my future, and give it to the son she had already stolen from me emotionally. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, that I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The anger was still there, but it was now a cold, hard thing, like a block of ice in my chest. There was no more confusion, no more doubt. I knew exactly what they were, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I needed professional help. I couldn't just confront them with a stack of papers I barely understood. They would deny it, obfuscate, and turn it back on me. I needed an expert, someone who could lay out the facts in a way that was undeniable. I called a friend from college, a woman named Karen who had become a forensic accountant. We hadn't spoken in years, but she was the smartest person I knew when it came to money. "Susan, it's been ages," she said, her voice warm and friendly. "How are you?" "I'm okay, Karen," I said. "Actually, I need your help with something. It's a bit of a sensitive family matter." I explained the situation to her, leaving out the emotional details and focusing on the financial facts. I told her about the secret account, the monthly transfers, the beneficiary designation. I emailed her the statements I had found. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. "Wow, Susan," she said finally. This is not good. This is a classic case of financial infidelity, and it looks like there's some elder manipulation involved as well, though your husband is a willing participant. What can I do?" I asked, my voice small. "The first thing we need to do is get a complete picture," she said, her tone shifting into professional mode. "These statements are a good start, but we need to know where all the money has gone. The account is in David's name, but Margaret seems to be controlling it. We need to see if there have been any withdrawals, any other transactions that aren't on these statements. Can you get me online access to the account?" I told her I couldn't. I didn't have the password, and asking David for it would raise a huge red flag. "Okay, that's fine," she said. "There are other ways. I can do a full asset search on all of them, David, his mother, and your son. It will cost a bit, but it will give us a complete financial picture and show us if this money has been moved or used to purchase other assets." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "I don't care what it costs. I need to know everything." Over the next week, Karen worked her magic. It was a strange time. I was living in the same house as David, eating meals with him, sleeping next to him, all while this secret investigation was happening in the background. I felt like a spy in my own life. I was polite but distant. David seemed to notice the change in me. He tried to be more affectionate, to draw me back in. He suggested we go out for dinner, that we take a weekend trip. I think he knew on some level that he had crossed a line, but he had no idea how far I had gone on the other side. I made excuses, pleading headaches and deadlines. The wall between us was getting higher every day. During this time, I also started thinking about Leo. The video of his driving test was my ace in the hole, the thing that would get their attention, the public humiliation to counter the one he had dealt me. I had kept it all these years, not for any malicious reason, but because it was just so funny. Leo had always been an arrogant kid, a know-it-all who thought he was better than everyone else. His driving test had been a moment of pure, unadulterated failure, and it was glorious. He had been 16, full of swagger, and had insisted on taking the test in his grandfather's old, giant sedan, a car he had barely driven. The dashcam footage, which I had installed for safety, captured the whole disaster. He stalled the car 3 times just trying to pull out of the parking spot. He took a right turn from the left lane. He nearly ran over a row of traffic cones. The best part was the parallel parking attempt. He had completely misjudged the space, bumped the curb, and then, in a fit of frustration, had hit the gas instead of the brake, lurching forward and tapping the car in front of him. The driving instructor, a weary-looking man with a permanent frown, had just sighed and written on his clipboard. Leo's reaction was priceless. He had actually started to cry. Not loud sobs, but quiet, frustrated tears, his face crumpled in defeat. "This is so unfair," he had whimpered. "The car is too big." It was the perfect weapon. It was a visual representation of the real Leo, the insecure boy hiding behind a wall of bravado built by his grandmother. It would knock him off his pedestal. It would make him small. I found the old memory card, transferred the video to my phone, and saved it to the cloud. It was ready. A week later, Karen called me. "I have everything," she said, her voice grim. "It's worse than we thought." She sent me a detailed report. It turned out that the Jennings Trust was just the beginning. A few years ago, Margaret had convinced David to use a significant portion of that secret fund as a down payment on a condominium for Leo. The condo was in Leo's name, but Margaret was a co-signer on the mortgage. They had told the bank that the down payment was a gift from David. In reality, it was money stolen from our joint retirement fund. Leo was living in a home that I had paid for, without my knowledge or consent. But there was more. The report also showed that Margaret had been using the remaining funds in the trust to pay for Leo's lavish lifestyle. There were credit card payments, car payments, even payments for expensive vacations he had taken with his girlfriend, Amelia. The very same girlfriend who was wearing my mother's pearl earrings. Leo wasn't just a willing participant in this scheme, he was the primary beneficiary. He was living a life of luxury, funded by his mother's stolen retirement savings. His arrogance wasn't just personality, it was entitlement. He truly believed he deserved all of it. He believed he was superior to me, the woman whose life's work was funding his leisure. The full truth was laid out before me in black and white. This was not just about disrespect. This was a conspiracy, a long-term, calculated plan between a mother and son to systematically defraud me. Margaret was the architect, David was the unwitting bank, and Leo was the prince they were building a kingdom for. My role in their plan was simple: to work, to save, and to eventually be discarded, a fragile, old woman with nothing to her name. I printed out Karen's entire report, every last page of bank statements, property records, and transaction histories. I put it all in a thick binder. This was my ammunition. I had the key artifact, the undeniable proof that would blow their world apart. I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer a victim. I was the one holding all the cards, and I was about to play my hand. I decided I would not do this in private. A private confrontation would allow them to close ranks, to gaslight me, to control the narrative. This needed to be done with an audience. Not a big one, but a strategic one. I called David, Margaret, and Leo and told them I was hosting a family dinner on Sunday night. "I think we need to talk about what happened at the party and clear the air," I said, my voice sweet and reasonable. Margaret was immediately suspicious. I could hear it in her tone. But the offer to be the center of attention at a family drama was too tempting for her to resist. Leo agreed with a bored sigh, as if he were doing me a great favor. David, desperate to smooth things over, was relieved. I also invited my sister, Claire. I needed a witness, someone who was firmly on my side. I told her I was going to handle things, and I needed her there for support. I didn't tell her the details of what I had discovered. I wanted her reaction to be genuine. The final guest I invited was Amelia, Leo's girlfriend. I called her and told her that I had a family heirloom I wanted to give her, a companion piece to the earrings Margaret had given her. She was delighted and accepted immediately. She was an innocent party in all of this, but she was also Leo's Achilles heel. Her perception of him mattered, and I was about to shatter it. On Sunday evening, they all arrived. Margaret swept in like a visiting monarch, offering me a chilly air kiss. Leo grunted a hello and immediately started scrolling on his phone. David hovered nervously, trying to make small talk. Claire gave me a supportive squeeze on the arm, her eyes full of concern. Amelia was the only one who seemed genuinely happy to be there. She gave me a warm hug and thanked me for inviting her. We made it through dinner, the tension simmering just below the surface of the polite conversation. Margaret dominated the discussion, talking about her friends, her charity work, her various ailments. Leo chimed in occasionally to agree with her or to make a sarcastic comment at my expense. David just ate his food, his eyes on his plate. After the plates were cleared, I asked everyone to move to the living room. This was it, the moment of truth. I had placed the thick binder with all the financial documents on the coffee table. I had my phone in my pocket, ready to connect to the television. I took a deep breath. I asked you all here tonight because what happened at the party needs to be addressed. I began, my voice calm and steady. Leo, what you said to me was deeply hurtful and humiliating. Leo scoffed. Oh my God. Are we still talking about this? It was a joke, Mom. You need to get a thicker skin. No, it wasn't a joke, I said, looking him directly in the eye. It was a dismissal. And it was a performance. Ordered by your grandmother. Margaret gasped, placing a hand on her chest in a gesture of theatrical shock. How dare you? I would never do such a thing. Susan, you are being paranoid. Am I? I said, turning my gaze to her. Claire, you were there. Why don't you tell everyone what you saw? Claire sat up straight. I saw you lean over and whisper to Leo, she said, her voice clear and strong. And then I saw you nod at him, right before he stood up and said it. It was deliberate. Margaret's face tightened. Your sister has always disliked me. She's just trying to cause trouble. This isn't about my sister, I said. This is about a pattern of behavior that has been going on for 35 years. You've spent my entire marriage trying to undermine me, trying to turn my own son against me. You have painted me as unstable, as incompetent, as a burden. This is absurd, Margaret sputtered. David, are you going to let her say these things to me? David looked from his mother to me, his face a mess of confusion and conflict. Susan, maybe we should talk about this privately, he said, his voice weak. No, I said firmly. We're done with private talks. We're done with secrets. We're going to have this conversation out in the open for once. I looked at Leo, who was smirking again, enjoying the show. You seem to think you're a big man, Leo.
So confident, so in charge.
But I remember a time when you weren't so tough. I took out my phone. With a few taps, I connected it to the television. And then I hit play. The video filled the large screen. The grainy dashcam footage showed a 16-year-old Leo, his face pale with panic, gripping the steering wheel of the giant sedan. The sound of the car stalling once, twice, 3 times. The shaky camera work as he attempted the disastrous right turn. And then, the grand finale, the parallel parking attempt. The bump against the curb, the lurch forward into the other car, and the sight of my arrogant, swaggering son crumbling into tears. The sound of his whimpering voice filled the silent room. This is so unfair. Leo's face went from pale to beet red. Turn it off, he hissed, his voice a strangled whisper. Turn it off right now. Where did you even get that? Amelia was staring at the screen, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. This was not the confident, successful man she thought she was dating. This was a crying child. I kept it, I said, not taking my eyes off Leo. I kept it for special occasion. You wanted to be the center of attention at the party, Leo. Well, here you go. The spotlight is all yours. I let the video play to the very end, the final shot of a dejected instructor shaking his head as he marked a giant fail on the test form. Then the screen went black. The silence in the room was deafening. Leo looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Margaret was staring at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. That was a cruel and childish thing to do, Susan, she said, her voice trembling with rage. Was it? I asked, my voice as cold as ice. I think it was an appropriate response to your cruel and childish games. But you're right. That was just for fun. The real reason we're here is this. I reached forward and opened the binder on the coffee table. I turned it around so everyone could see. This, I said, is the Jennings Trust, the secret fund that you, David, have been paying into for the last 10 years with our retirement money. David's face went ashen. He looked at the papers, then at his mother, a flicker of fear in his eyes. You told me it was a care fund for your mother, I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. You told me she was saving it for her future. But that was a lie, wasn't it? It was a lie she fed you. I looked at Margaret. You told him I was financially irresponsible, that I couldn't be trusted with our money. You wrote him a letter, convincing him to hide money from me to protect it. I took the letter out of the binder and handed it to David. He read it, his hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. But the money wasn't for you, was it, Margaret? I went on, my voice ringing with clarity. The beneficiary of this trust, the person who was getting all of our stolen money, was Leo. I turned to Leo, who was now staring at the binder with wide, panicked eyes. That's not all, I said. A few years ago, a large chunk of this money was used for a down payment on a condominium. Your condominium, Leo. The one you live in. The one you told me you bought with a bonus from work. I looked at Amelia. I paid for that condo, Amelia. And I paid for the car he drives. And I paid for the vacation to Italy you two took last summer. I paid for all of it, and I never even knew. Amelia looked from me to Leo, her face a mixture of confusion and horror.
Leo?
Is this true? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Leo couldn't speak. He just sat there, his public and private humiliation complete. I looked at David. His face had crumpled. The denial was gone, replaced by the devastating weight of the truth. He looked at his mother, not with anger, but with a look of profound, heartbreaking betrayal. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. You did this?
You told me.
You told me Susan would waste it all. Margaret finally broke. Her icy composure shattered into a million pieces. I did it for you, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at David. I did it for our family. She was going to leave you with nothing. I was protecting you. I was protecting Leo. Protecting him? I said, my voice low and dangerous. You weren't protecting him. You were poisoning him. You turned him into a weak, entitled man who thinks it's okay to steal from his own mother. You have ruined him. And you, I said, turning to David, you let her. You stood by and watched her do it for 35 years because you were too much of a coward to stand up to your own mother. The room was silent again. The truth, in all its ugly, undeniable detail, was laid bare on the coffee table. There was nowhere left for them to hide. The dynasty had fallen. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Margaret continued to shout, a stream of denials and accusations. Leo sat frozen in his chair, a statue of shame. Amelia stood up, her face pale. I have to go, she whispered, and without another look at Leo, she walked out of the house. I heard her car start and drive away. One of the pillars of Leo's carefully constructed life had just crumbled. David finally found his voice. He stood up and faced his mother, his body trembling with a rage I had never seen in him before. All these years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. All these years, you told me I was doing the right thing. You made me lie to my own wife. You made me steal from her. It was our money, Margaret insisted. You earned it. It was our money, David repeated, his voice dropping to a low growl. Hers and mine. We built a life together. And you tried to tear it down. You used me. And you used my son, he turned to Leo, his expression hardening. And you knew, didn't you? You knew where that money was coming from. You took it, and you let your grandmother convince you that you were entitled to it. You let her turn you against your own mother, the woman who raised you. Leo finally looked up, his eyes filled with tears. This time, they weren't the crocodile tears of a frustrated teenager. They were the real, painful tears of a man who had just lost everything. I'm sorry, he mumbled. Grandma said. She said it was my inheritance. It was theft, David said, his voice flat. And it's over. All of it. That night, David told his mother to leave. He told her not to contact him, that he needed time. He told her she was no longer welcome in her home. She left, but not before giving me a look of such pure venom that it could have curdled milk. The next day, David went to the bank. He froze the trust account. He contacted a lawyer. He was determined to get every single penny back. He told Leo that he had to sell the condominium immediately. The proceeds from the sale were to go directly back into our retirement fund. He cut Leo off completely. No more car payments, no more credit card bills, no more safety net. In the days that followed, I had a series of quiet, difficult conversations. The first was with David. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where he had dismissed my feelings just a week earlier. He looked like a broken man. "I am so sorry, Susan," he said, his voice hoarse. "There are no words. I was weak. I was a fool. I let her manipulate me my entire life, and I let her hurt you. I don't know if you can ever forgive me." "I don't know either, David," I said honestly. "This isn't something that can be fixed with an apology. You broke my trust. You broke our marriage. It's going to take a long, long time to see if we can rebuild it." We started going to therapy together. It was hard, painful work, unearthing 35 years of buried resentment and dysfunction. But for the first time, he was listening. For the first time, he was on my side. My sister, Claire, called me the day after the confrontation. "I am so proud of you," she said, her voice full of emotion. "You took your power back." I knew she was a snake, but I never imagined she was capable of something like this. "She's not just a manipulator. She's a criminal." Her validation was a balm on my wounded soul. She had seen my struggle for years, and now she was seeing my triumph. A few weeks later, Leo called me. He was crying. Amelia had broken up with him for good. He was trying to sell the condo, but the market was slow. He had to get a second job to make ends meet. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said, his voice choked with sobs. "I was so stupid. I believed everything she told me. I know I don't deserve it, but please, can you forgive me?" "An apology won't fix this, Leo," I told him, my voice gentle but firm. "I'm your mother, and on some level, I will always love you. But I don't respect the man you became. You need to fix yourself. You need to figure out how to be a good person without your grandmother's money and influence. Maybe then, we can talk about forgiveness." It was the hardest thing I had ever had to say to him, but it was the truth. The world that Margaret and Leo had built for themselves shrank to almost nothing. Margaret, forced to start paying back the money she had orchestrated the theft of, had to sell her own condominium. She moved into a small, bleak rental apartment. Her society friends, having heard whispers of the scandal, abandoned her. Her reputation as the benevolent matriarch was destroyed, replaced by the truth of what she was: a bitter, greedy old woman. Leo's life also imploded. Without the condo, the car, and the endless stream of cash, his life of arrogant leisure was over. He was forced to move into a tiny apartment with a roommate and work 2 jobs he hated just to pay his bills. He had learned the hard way that his charm and confidence were built on a foundation of my stolen money. Without it, he was just another angry young man, humbled and humiliated. David and I slowly, cautiously, began to build a new life. The money from the sale of Leo's condo was returned to our retirement account. We sat down with a new, independent financial planner, a woman who answered to both of us. We looked at maps. We read travel blogs. We started to plan the future that Margaret had tried to steal from us. It was different now. Quieter. More honest. The trust was still fragile, a delicate thing that needed to be handled with care, but for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I had a true partner. One evening, we were sitting on the back porch, looking at the yard where the disastrous party had taken place. It was peaceful now, the ghosts of that night finally banished. David reached over and took my hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" I asked. "For not leaving me," he said, "and for showing me the truth, even though it was the hardest thing I've ever had to face." I squeezed his hand. The road ahead was long, but we were on it together. My final thought was not of anger or revenge, but of a quiet, profound satisfaction. They had wanted me to be quiet and small, to fade into the background of my own life. Instead, I had learned to use my voice. And in doing so, I had made sure their world was the one that shrank.